Today is episode 2 of the Grief Roundtable Miniseries. Our topics include how to answer tough questions that come up in casual conversation regarding child loss and what to do about special days like birthdays and holidays. Each guest gives their view of how to celebrate the one they love on those really hard days that none of us expected to ever have to learn to manage. If your loss was something other than child loss, this episode is valuable to help you learn different ways to honor the one you love on those difficult days. To learn more about each guest's personal story of loss, listen to episode 1. If you prefer to watch the episode, it is available on YouTube, where you will find the video as well as pictures of each guest and their child. Welcome to the show. This is your host, Teresa Davis. Today is a series of grief roundtable discussions. Now, this will be the second video or podcast in the series. The first one will be all the stories of the ladies that you see here with me today. If you haven't listened to those, please go back and listen to those episodes, and that'll help give you a reference for today. So these 5 precious mamas that are sitting in with me today are all grieving mothers, and each one of these mothers have lost children at different stages of their life. And the purpose of this series is to openly discuss the hard places that many of you are processing right now in your grief journeys. And together, we want to come together and comfort you and to let you know that even though you feel like you might not be able to survive, that you will be able to survive. And we're going to discuss some difficult topics in these series. One of those being how to answer difficult questions, how to celebrate your children on your birthdays, the day they met Jesus, and the holidays, what to do about that, how to make your children a part of your holidays. And I'm honored to have all these different opinions with me here today, because I know that one is particularly a difficult subject for a lot of folks. So you'll get lots of different input here. We're going to talk about difficult subjects, guys. We're going to talk about anger. We're going to talk about forgiveness. And we're also going to talk about gratitude. So ladies, it is my great honor that each of you are here with me today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, our first topic is going to be one of many questions that stop you in the tracks when you're grieving. So I remember the very first time it happened to me, I was totally unprepared because my mind hadn't even considered things that people might say to me. But one of them, I just remember the exact place that I was and what happened when this happened to me. I'm going to ask you, Olga, to start us off with this question. What do we say to people when they ask you how many children you have?
So I always have, and I will have 4 children. It doesn't matter what happened. And I know I felt a little bit uncomfortable when people asked me from the beginning, how many kids do you have? And they didn't know my story, because I knew after I will say I have 4, they will ask me how old they are or where they are. And anyway, I'm supposed to mention then one of my kids in heaven right now. And I knew the people will feel very uncomfortable because they don't know what to say, how to continue the conversation. And sometimes this conversation was immediately cut off after I said one of my kids in heaven. So right now I learned how to answer, and I usually say I have 4 kids. I start from my youngest one. I say if it's girl or boy, how old she or he is. And then I finished with my oldest one, and I said he would be 26 this year. And then I can see this a little bit confusing people's eyes because they don't know what to say. And I continue my explanation, and I say, Pasha was wonderful soccer player, and all my kids continue to play in soccer. So I kind of try to feel people more comfortable about it. And then they continue to ask me the questions about my kids because they know I can talk about it more.
Yeah, I love that, how you say the conversation kind of just stopped. Who else has had to address that question?
I remember. Yeah, I was in the grocery store. So I remember the first year, it's kind of like, do I want to go there or not? And so I would be choosy about more like where my heart was. Like, I'm not going to do this in front of this lady right now. Or I would just, yeah, tell it was usually with strangers that it was the hardest, I think, that, just so yeah, that sometimes they got more than they bargained for that day. And I would just tell them. But now it's funny you say that, because I was just with friends recently in a group of strangers as well. And they asked, and I said 3. And I don't know why I did that, but it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, I just don't want to go there. And my friend corrected me. And I was like, okay, you're right. Thank you. I appreciated it. But it's funny you say that, because there are times where I'm like, I don't want to go there right now.
And how long has it been for you, Valerie?
It was 2018. So yeah, this year.
So 4 years. Yeah. and it's still uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Tanya? How do you handle it?
Well, I just remember those first few times when somebody asked, and I just would tear up, and that's all I could do is cry. And Scott would have to finish. We have 3, but 1 is in heaven, and then it, like you said, I'll just shut down the conversation. I find now that if somebody asks us, that I will say 3, and oftentimes they'll say, well, how old is your oldest? And so I'll start with the oldest, and then I might get to our daughter, the middle, and then the conversation just goes elsewhere. Then I don't even get to the youngest, because there's really not that interest. It just was a nice way to have a conversation with somebody new. But if I do get to the 3rd, then I do talk about Trefton when I talk about that he was 30. And, I don't cry as easily now, though I still hurt deeply. But I don't start the conversation out bubbling, and not being able to say anything.
Well, it's interesting to me, Cheryl. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I didn't anticipate that being an issue. Of course, I hadn't even thought about it. But how have you handled it?
Very, very similar. It's hard because it brings a situation right to your tongue, and sometimes it's easy, especially depending on the environment. If it's a work question or you feel like it's more just a social breezing question, I may not go that deep. But there's other times that even as I say 3, because I had 3 and will always say 3, tears come to my eyes. But with time, it gets a little bit easier. And again, kind of choosing the audience on how far do you really want me to go? But even to Valerie's point, there are times that if in that mood and I just want to talk about Brenton, it flows so easy, and it goes right into how wonderful he was and the things he did, and it just opens an opportunity to brighten my day.
Well, I like that view. I mean, it gives you an opportunity to talk about him. So I like that view as well. What about you, Jennifer?
Same. Had some really awkward encounters with this question in unlikely places. I've said 3 when I do have 4, and I've said 3 and I've been corrected too by a friend, Valerie. But I think whatever we want to say, it's up to us what we want to say in the moment, how much we want to share, and there isn't a right or wrong. And I've kind of had to come to grips with that, because that particular time when I said 3, I felt really bad later about it. And it just came out reflexively. It was an environment of people I didn't know very well, and just kind of had to have peace that, whatever I want to say, whatever is best for me in the moment is okay.
That's a great answer. And, I like too what you said, Cheryl, about assessing the situation, because I mean, when you're early in your grief though, and you get that question for the first time, I mean, it's just kind of like a deer in the headlights, because it's like, well, I've never answered this. And obviously we still have the child that has gone on to heaven, but it's such an it can create that awkward situation. So I love, Cheryl, how you are able to assess the situation about how far to go into it. I loved all of those answers. Mm-hmm. Our next topic is kind of it's a big topic, and I feel like we're going to spend a good amount of time here, because it's a topic that all of us, it's very different, I think, for every individual, especially, I mean, we've got lots of different ages here of children that we've lost. And I think that it definitely influences how you celebrate your children, it's such an awkward thing, I think, to be able to figure out, how do I celebrate my child's birthday when they're not here? Or how do I make them a part of the holiday? So I'd like for you to start us out on that, Tanya. What are your views on that? What kind of traditions have you and Scott developed along those lines?
Well, Christmas, we had all of his ornaments we gave our kids a new ornament each year. So we have Trafton's tree. and it has just his ornaments. It's a little 3-foot tree, and it has each of his ornaments on it, and that's just his tree. And that's been a gift to us. We love to decorate, and so anybody else that comes into our house just sees a lot of Christmas trees. But that's a special, special one for him. And for our other children, just acknowledge, they'll go by the tree and they'll talk about the memory that was associated with that ornament. And so it's a gift to all of us.
Well, so was that something you did before Trafton went to heaven, or is that something you started after that you had the tree just for him?
After.
After.
Yeah, after he died. And I still hang his stocking now because we're in the process of moving in the new house. It's not as prominent. It's not in the main room. It's in our bedroom. We just have the grandchildren on the fireplace. But in Scott's and my bedroom, I have all 3 of our kids. Their original stockings are with us because he will always be my youngest. He will always be my little bud.
Yeah. Tanya, how do you do birthdays? Do you guys celebrate his birthday?
We do. And I have to tell you, a couple of years ago, he would have been 33 years old. And I just was saying to our older son, I said, Ty, Trafton would have been 33 today. And this is a hard birthday, September 3rd, 33. And just for some reason, it was harder than the previous couple. And I said, Mom, he is 33 today because you had him 33 years ago. And that was really neat for our oldest son to just kind of correct me and say, Mom, he is 33. And we will celebrate. Because we're in different towns, then we do a text chain, and our daughter usually will start it, or sometimes our son will start it, and just we'll build on memories. Remember when? And we do that on birthdays, and we do that on his heavenly birthday as well, as we just begin it with memories. A lot of times we'll go to one of his favorite places to eat. We all have dessert. Our daughter and her family will be having ice cream and cake that night, celebrating Trafton. So we all celebrate in our own ways. Our older son will go out to the cemetery because he runs by there a lot. So we all celebrate it. We may not all be together, but we're all celebrating the fact that Trafton was a part of our family and is a part of our family.
And you guys remember from the video that Trafton was an adult when he went to heaven. So I'd like to hear from you, Jennifer, because Calvin was a little guy. And I think that there's a different element of that when your child dies when they still live in your home. I think it's a different, not that it's better or worse, but it's a different impact when they are still living in your home. So can you share with us how you and Eric handle those hard holiday times?
Well, Calvin died on November the 24th, and his birthday is January the 15th. So all of our hard days surround the holidays, which makes it really hard. And we always say that just fall into his birthday is just our really hard season. And so, on his heaven day, the first couple of years, we tried to quietly mark that with the children, but we found our children at home weren't interested in even acknowledging that day. And so we kind of acknowledged that quietly ourselves. Not that we would celebrate it, but they're just really not even comfortable talking about it. So instead, what we do is the first day of Advent, which is very close to November the 24th. It's usually just a few days away. We go out to his spot at the cemetery together and change his arrangement to a Christmas tree. And then we come home and we decorate what we call our hope tree in his honor. And so on the hope tree are ornaments that remind us of him. He was only 22 months when he died. So it's things like tractors and construction vehicles and dinosaurs. He really liked music. So it's guitars and banjos. But then there's also a lot of ornaments that just remind us of the hope that we have in Christ, and ornaments with pictures of him. So we do that very intentionally, one ornament at a time, so that we're really taking the time to think about and remember him. Yeah. And then that's our main Christmas tradition surrounding Calvin. And then for his birthday, I've just found it's simplest for us to do the same thing every year. And for now, our kids are still fine with the routine. But basically what we do is we again, go out to his spot at the cemetery. We change flowers. We write notes for him that we attach to balloons, and we release them up to heaven. And then we usually go get some kind of treat. But thus far, we don't do cake and ice cream or anything like that. I just think we're just not quite ready to make it a full-blown celebration. But we definitely do remember him. We watch videos and look at pictures, because one of my greatest concerns as a parent is just that they remember their brother. And I don't have a lot of memory from my younger days. So that's just a great opportunity to look at videos and things, and they love to do that.
Well, I love that, because the uniqueness, I really do feel that families all traditionally have different ways to celebrate holidays and birthdays. But when you still have children in the home, which three of you still do, I think that definitely affects the way that you manage it, because it has such an impact on your surviving children. Do you hang a stocking for Calvin?
We do.
You do?
We do. But we only had one Christmas and one birthday with him.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Well, I think the stocking, for one reason, for another, I don't know. The stocking was one of the hardest things for me, because I thought if I hang it, he's not going to take anything out of it. That whole thing. And what we ended up doing, I do hang it every year. And initially I had his children, grandchildren write notes and stuff, but you have to be careful when you've got small ones grieving, and I didn't want to influence them in any way to upset them. So what I do is every year I journal, I get a card out and I journal about him, about where we are in our grief that year. And then I drop that in the stocking, because then it makes me feel like it's just not there for ornamental only. I'm making something of value. And then maybe when, Andrew's children are older, maybe they can read some of those. But I just think the uniqueness of everybody's traditions are very helpful. What about you, Cheryl? Because I know your son, Britton was 23, right?
He was 23. He turned 23 October 14th, and he was in the motorcycle accident October 16th. So for us, his birth date and his death date are back to back. And being that our middle daughter received the initial phone call and what went on, we were with him in the hospital for a week. We, every year in that year anniversary, we go away as a family for 2 weeks. There will be a point we probably won't, but we knew after that year we could not try and do life in that time period because of the birth date, and then the trauma memories of what we went through. So we have rented a cabin in Tennessee or in Georgia for those 2 weeks. It kind of happened by happenstance, but we end up doing like an individual walk with each other. We collect leaves. It's October, so there's fall leaves all over. And it happened from the first time we went that we pick up leaves as we've taken morning walks. And then as we approach his his death date, we're also allowing those leaves to release into the lake and talk about memories, talk about qualities he had, talk about things that we want to keep alive as a family. And they're always different. Sometimes they're stemmed with joy. Sometimes they're stemmed with pain. Allie, my middle daughter, will remember fights she had with her brother or scrapping, with him at a young age. But it just really reminds us we're still on this journey together. So we do that as a family. Again, I think maybe down the road it may dwindle, but the grandkids come and we just grieve individually, and then even as a family come together. So it's helped, and that works for us. We do have moments of celebration, celebrate the way he lived, and then we have moments that we're grieving what we don't have, mourning what we don't have any longer.
What about the holiday? How do you bring him into the holiday, especially like around Christmas?
So the holiday, and he was musical. There was always piano music or music with the family, and that was just who Brenton was and what he brought in. We do have some videos of that music that we'll play, or even like a thumb drive that goes into our electric piano that we can listen to him playing. We have a stocking, and I'll tell you, try and do it without crying. We already had a stocking that had his name and a picture of when he went on a mission trip, and it had the word joy on it. And I remember that first year thinking, what is joy? Like, what is joy going to look like beyond today? How would I ever even experience joy again? That word just smacked me hard. And as I prayed about it, and as we could even go into that second year of Christmas, joy became Jesus over you. And that's the joy that we get even in our grieving, is Jesus over you. He sees us, he knows our pain. And yes, joy started to trickle back in, but that word was hard at first with his picture.
You bring up something I think that's pertinent, Cheryl, is that there are seasons of grief. So what we do right now may not be what we do, like you said, when a different season of your life. So I think that's important to point out for people that are listening. Just because you do something one way one year doesn't mean you have to do it that way the next year, the next year. I think the way we honor them kind of moves with us as we move forward in our grief journeys. What about you, Olga? Because Pasha was in a different state than you. And so how have you guys, I know you guys are a very close family, so how have you guys been able to celebrate those moments in your home?
So first of all, we always celebrate Christmas. I would say with Pasha, we have his stocking with his name. And what we do, kids still remember the different chocolate candies and bubble gum what Pasha bought for youngest kids for Christmas. And they always ask me to buy the same kind of candies and bubble gum. And we put it in his stocking. And every member of our family, we write a letter to Pasha. We put it in different envelopes. We put our name, his name, and put in stocking. So in this stocking, I have all these letters and notes from 2015, basically. So I still keep it. We don't open it, we don't read it, but everybody write these letters and notes. And we also celebrate his heavenly birthday and his earthly birthday. And what we do, the first couple years, we usually went to closer to the ocean because our family memories, it's connect with spend time near the ocean. And what I can relate to Jennifer, we buy sometimes just in dollar store, like a huge smile faces, yellow ones, or some birthday we can buy a huge red hearts. And for example, last year, Pasha had 25th birthday, and we bought 25 balloons, and everybody put whatever they wanted to put on these balloons, and we just put it in the air. We wanted to send all this love, what we can tell him right now from our hearts. We put all these messages on the balloons, and what interesting, every time when we did it near the ocean, we had a rainbow in the sky.
Oh,
it's
how
hard
beautiful.
to believe because sometimes it was a great weather, sometimes it was a little bit, rain, but every time we had this rainbow, and you have these tears in your eyes because you can see this response back that Pasha is with me, everything is good, just continue to trust me even when you don't understand. So yes, we celebrate both of his birthdays. And he also, here in the United States, he loved red velvet cake. We never tried it in Ukraine, in our home country. So every heavenly birthday, my husband buys this big red velvet cake, and kids absolutely love it. And also, my husband has a tradition. It's not tradition from Ukraine, it's just tradition from our family. When we have a birthday of our kids, every year for each birthday of our kids, he buys usually a bouquet of flowers. It's usually roses in different colors. And he still continues to do it even when Pasha passed away in 2015, even 8 years later, he's still doing it. And he's coming in my office, in the middle of the day and bringing these flowers. So I think it's very special.
I think that's special because it gives you, Mama, something to look forward to. And I'll never be able to eat red velvet cake again without thinking about Pasha, because I love red velvet cake too. So, Valerie, I know you didn't have little Nora for very long. So tell us how you guys manage that.
Yeah. Yeah, really similar to Jen. She was not quite 2. And, I never looked at it as like an escape before, but maybe it is. We go to Broken Bow on her birthday. It kind of just falls that way, but it's good for us. We did it the first year. I think it's really been a really sweet bonding time. This time we went with the extended family, and we all watched the video together that my brother-in-law put together of all of her pictures and these really sweet songs. And it was really cool. They wanted to celebrate with us, and that was really meaningful. And, our kids, it looks very different for each one of them. One is very open and grieves openly, and then the other one, it just kind of spills over at random times. But it was really sweet to do that with family. So we kind of do that on her birthday every year. And then, her Heaven Day, we had been going to the cemetery, but we don't do it every time. And I think we're always reminding, when we go, we're always reminding them, like, this isn't really where Nora is, but this is just kind of what we do to remember where she is, because that can be confusing. Because my kids
absolutely.
were, gosh, let's see, 2018, they were 6 and 4, so it's a little fuzzy in their memories. So we're talking to them from that age on, navigating that with them. But for Christmas, we honestly don't have a stocking that we leave out, and I think it is because the letters I love, like I might start doing that just because I feel weird having an empty stocking, but I love that. And we have, every year I buy new ornaments with like a picture of her or something, a memory. Friends and family do that too for us. So we might have to get our own tree one day, but
the tree, the trees that you, Jennifer and Tanya, that's a great idea. And something that we do. So it's been a tradition for us for years. I always buy an ornament for everybody. And even if they got married, I would buy just an ornament for that family. And so it felt so weird the first couple years because I wasn't buying an ornament for Andrew. So I started doing that just a couple of years ago. I buy an ornament with Andrew's name on it. And to me, that gives me, because Olga, you were saying how your husband brings you flowers, instead of dreading, it gives you something to look forward to. So instead of dreading of how you're going to manage these, and that's what I hope people are gleaning from our conversations here. It's like, do something that works with your family, that's going to give you something to look forward to bring that memory. And, Cheryl, all the stuff you said about how you guys, I just, that is so healthy and so wonderful and allows everybody to express themselves. And it's just a way of bringing them into the holiday. And I think that's so hard for people to be able to work through that, what's going to work for them. But I love buying an ornament and having Andrew's name put on it. So that's something that we do. So I appreciate everything that you guys had to offer there. I think it's wonderful examples of people that can take into their own journeys. If you enjoyed today's show, would you share it with someone that needs to hear a message of hope? Subscribe to the show and leave a review, as this will help the podcast reach more of those in need of hope in the midst of grief.